over to House Hoops on X, which captured this moment. And Breanna Stewart is talking about that, among other things.
For me, it's like, this is the first time we're in a revenue shared model. So before it was like, we had like a hard cap and we had a structure and you could have 220 max and everything else kind of trickled down. You know, now we're going to like really blow that out of the water, which is incredible.
The tension in the air is palpable. A quiet storm gathering over what should be a triumphant dawn for women's professional basketball. We are in February of 2025. The WNBA is coming off a season that can only be described as a cultural and commercial revelation. Ratings soared, arenas buzzed, jerseys flew off shelves, and a new generation of superstars became household names. The league, after 28 years of grinding perseverance, is finally poised on the precipice of mainstream, sustainable success. Yet, instead of preparations for a triumphant encore, the dominant sound is the metronomic tick of a negotiation clock, counting down toward a potential abyss. The season is in jeopardy. At the very heart of this high-stakes standoff is a fundamental question of equity, power, and risk. It is a conflict between...
We've also talked about the conflict of interest, which really does figure into all of this. You have a Breanna Stewart and a Napheesa Collier who own a different league, yet they're the ones negotiating their, particularly Napheesa Collier, she's the one who's been out there. She's been talking a whole lot. And meanwhile, they're okay because they have a whole different league. And then Project B came along, and then Project B would be at the same time as Unrivaled. So not quite sure how that's all going to work out. It's just a very convoluted type mess.
The urgent needs of the many and the ambitious demands of the few. Between seizing a historic deal and holding out for an ideal one. Between collective growth and individual gain. And no moment crystallizes this dilemma more starkly than a recent interview given by one of the game's brightest stars, Breanna Stewart. Stewart, a former MVP and champion, sat for a conversation that was revealing in its candor and consequential in its implications. For me, it's like this is the first time we're in a revenue-shared model, she began, outlining the shift from the old hard cap structure. Now we're going to really blow that out of the water, which is incredible.
As WNBA players, it's like, well, we've signed however many CBA deals before, and we just don't want to get gypped. We don't want to feel like we're signing something and we're actually getting screwed, because now we know how much you need us. We see the valuations between all the teams and all the things and the expansion fees, and it's like, no, there's a lot of money behind this, so don't forget to pay us too. So it's just really a back and forth battle.
Would you say y'all are prepared not to play this season? I know you want to, but would you say you're prepared not to play?
We've approved the strike authorization vote, which means that we're able to formally lock out whenever we want because we have majority of the players' votes behind us.
This acknowledgement is significant. It confirms the league has put forward a proposal that fundamentally alters the economic relationship with its players, tying their earnings directly to the league's growth. This is not a marginal tweak. It is the architectural change players have advocated for years. But then came the pivot, the friction point where principle meets pragmatism. Stewart spoke of not wanting to get gypped, of seeing the soaring team valuations and expansion fees, like the Golden State Valkyries' $50 million entry price, and wanting a commensurate piece of that financial boom. The sentiment is understandable. Players see the money flowing into ownership groups, and rightly ask, where's ours?
I think that for me personally, the sooner it gets, the closer it gets to WNBA season, we're prepared to do it, to not play, but we don't want to. We want to play because we know how important it is to be on the court for a number of reasons, for the people, for the fans, for the city. But it'll be something that's really tough if push comes to shove, because, like you said, you're comparing apples to oranges. The W and the NBA, contracts are vastly different.
Very skewed, yeah.
So it's the top 10, maybe 15 players can survive without a W contract.
Right.
But the rest, it's no, you don't want to go that much without getting paid.
Yet, woven into her commentary was a stark, almost jarring admission of internal disparity. Only the top 10, maybe 15 players can afford to sit out the 2025 WNBA season, she stated, articulating what many have whispered, but few stars have said publicly. Everyone else, they need that paycheck. They need it desperately. Here, in plain language, was the uncomfortable truth of the WNBA's economic pyramid. A handful of global stars, buoyed by seven-figure endorsement portfolios and overseas earnings, possess a financial safety net. The vast majority of the league's 144 players do not. For them, the WNBA salary, which, even with recent increases, often falls between $60,000 and $120,000 for non-stars, is essential, not supplemental. It pays rent, funds childcare, and builds savings. This confession makes the subsequent stance all the more striking. Despite this acute awareness of her colleagues' vulnerability, Stewart confirmed the players' readiness to strike. We've approved the strike.
A great job of making sure that we have like the amenities and the resources. And if we don't get what we want, we will sit out. But we don't want to do that.
So a few takeaways from what Breanna Stewart said. Number one, she said, we see how much y'all need us. Now, some people might strongly disagree with that. Are you really needed? Number two, she said, we don't want to be jipped. Now, I showed the numbers from the leaked proposal, reportedly leaked proposal last night. We've talked about numbers a number of times. I don't know how you can look at those numbers and feel that you're being jipped. And a lot of people feel the same way. Jipped? Interesting word for those numbers. Number three, she acknowledges that there are players who need
strike authorization vote. We're prepared to do it, to not play if we don't get what we want. The phrase, what we want, hangs in the air, heavy and loaded. It is distinct from what we need or what is fair. It is a declaration of maximalist intent. This dynamic forms the core of the current crisis. The negotiation is not simply between a union and a league. It is increasingly a negotiation within the union itself, between different tiers of players with vastly different capacities for risk. And the voices guiding the strategy, stars like Stewart, Napheesa Collier, and others, exist in a different financial universe than the rank and file they represent. The situation grows even more convoluted when examining the other ventures of these leading voices. Breanna Stewart and Napheesa Collier are not just players. They are founders and owners of Unrivaled, a new 3-on-3 women's basketball league that completed its first season. They sit at the WNBA bargaining table, while simultaneously running a competing basketball operation. This isn't a hypothetical.
The money, and only maybe the top 10 or 15 are not in that category. She understands that. Number four, yes, they understand that, but they are still prepared to strike nonetheless. And they will. 5, if they don't get what they want, she said. So no, Breanna Stewart is not tone deaf. She is not lacking in understanding that this decision is a huge one that affects some people, most people, more than others. Others who own different leagues or who are playing in different leagues, who have money from endorsements, and whatever, the top players, they are not going to probably lose much sleep now over this decision if they choose not to play. Now, I say now because it would be a colossal mistake if they ruin this moment. And I think it will come back.
Conflict of interest. It is a tangible one. Add to this the impending launch of other leagues like Project B, and a perplexing picture emerges. The most vocal advocates for a hardline stance, who speak most freely about the willingness to sit out, are precisely those with the most diversified income streams and ownership stakes to fall back on. They have built parallel revenue engines. For the majority of WNBA players, however, there is no unrivaled ownership stake. There is no Puma signature shoe deal. There is the WNBA paycheck, and perhaps a contract to play overseas in the winter, a grueling cross-continental hustle that is its own form of sacrifice. This creates a profound power imbalance within the Players Association. When a star with millions in endorsements says, "We will sit out," it is a strategic gambit. When a reserve player making the league minimum hears that, it induces anxiety. Multiple reports suggest
At some point, if they strike, say, what in the world are we doing? Then, of course, you've got the players who would be seriously impacted by it. And I feel sure that they're saying, look, it is February. We got to start making moves and doing things. This is more money than I've ever seen. Let's rock and roll. So she's not tone deaf. She understands it. But at the end of the day, although she sounds conflicted, I'll give her that. At the end of the day, she's still saying, if we don't get what we want, despite those for whom that would be devastating, we're still going to strike. We got to get what we want. So if you've been wondering if she's considered other people, well, the answer is yes. Now, if you've been wondering, does she care in the sense of letting that affect their decision? Well, according to her own words, no, not that much. They still want what they want. So they're not ignorant. They're just not willing to budge, based on what she said. I'll catch
a growing, if quiet, friction within the union. Veterans and role players, eyeing the calendar and their bank accounts, are reportedly urging acceptance of the league's current offer. They see training camps looming in April and recognize they are economically unprepared for a work stoppage. But in a union where star power often translates to narrative power, these concerns risk being drowned out. To understand the stakes, one must examine what is actually being negotiated. Leaked details of the league's proposal paint a picture of unprecedented generosity and structural change, especially for a league that NBA Commissioner Adam Silver has acknowledged has operated at a loss for most of its history. The centerpiece is the introduction of a true revenue-sharing model. For the first time, player compensation would be directly pegged to league revenue growth. This is a transformative shift from the old system of negotiated cap increases. If the league's revenues jump from media rights, sponsorships, merchandise, and expansion, player salaries automatically jump in lockstep. This aligns the interests of players and owners perfectly. Both profit from the league's success. The proposal also includes substantial increases in minimum salaries, significantly improved travel conditions, moving from commercial coach to charter flights for all regular season games, enhanced healthcare and retirement benefits, and better marketing commitments. By any objective measure, this represents the single largest improvement in working conditions and compensation in WNBA history. It directly addresses long-standing player grievances. This is why Stewart's use of the word "jipped" gives many observers pause. To look at an offer that introduces revenue sharing, dramatically improves amenities, and raises salaries across the board, and to characterize it as being shortchanged, suggests a disconnect between expectations and economic reality. The reality is the chasm between WNBA and NBA economics, which Stewart herself referenced. An NBA rookie minimum salary exceeds $1 million. The 2024 WNBA maximum was $241,000. This gap is offensive and rooted in decades of gender-based undervaluation, but it cannot be wished away overnight. It is a reflection of a revenue gap that remains vast. The NBA generates roughly $10 billion annually. The WNBA, even in its breakthrough 2024 season, generated an estimated $200 million. That is a 5-0-to-1 ratio. The WNBA's offer is a bridge, a mechanism to ensure that as the league closes that revenue gap, the players are the primary beneficiaries. It is a bet on the future. The players, or at least their star-led leadership, seem to want a larger share of the present, despite the present still being a fraction of the scale they rightfully aspire to. Perhaps the most agonizing aspect of this impasse is its catastrophic timing. The WNBA is experiencing a perfect storm of relevance. Caitlin Clark's arrival, alongside other electrifying rookies, created a narrative tsunami. National TV ratings averaged 1.2 million viewers, a 48% year-over-year increase, with peak games shattering 3 million. Social media engagement exploded. Corporate partners lined up. The league transitioned from a niche concern to a genuine topic in the broader sports conversation. Momentum in sports is a fragile, fleeting force. It is built on consistency, narrative, and accessibility. A lost season would act as a circuit breaker on this incredible energy. The 1.2 million average viewers were not all die-hard fans. A huge portion were casual observers, drawn in by the spectacle and the stars. Sports history is littered with leagues that lost casual fans after a work stoppage. They drift away to other entertainment options and often do not return. The NHL's lost 2004-05 season is a permanent cautionary tale. It took years, if not decades, to recover in many U.S. markets. The WNBA, with a 28-year foundation but a newly ignited mainstream fuse, cannot afford such a reset. The damage would be multi-layered. Lost TV revenue, fractured sponsor relationships, abandoned arena leases, and, most crucially, a broken connection with a growing fan base. The players leveraged their ability to command this historic offer is a direct product of this very momentum. To wield that leverage in a way that destroys its source would be an act of profound self-sabotage. This leads to the most uncomfortable moral question of the negotiation. What is the responsibility of the privileged within a collective? A union's fundamental purpose is to protect all its members, with a special duty to the most vulnerable. The current stance, however, appears to be engineered by those least vulnerable, asking those most vulnerable to bear the brunt of the risk. It is the stars who can afford to sit out who are most loudly advocating for a sit-out. They are, in effect, asking their less famous teammates to forfeit a year of essential income, to potentially jeopardize their roster spots, and to gamble the league's hard-won momentum, all in pursuit of a bargaining point that might mean a few percentage points more in revenue sharing. Breanna Stewart's interview confirmed she understands this dichotomy intellectually. She's not tone-deaf, as one commentator noted. She sees the conflict, but understanding a hardship and allowing it to materially alter your course of action are two different things. Her conclusion, "We still want what we want," suggests that for the leadership, the collective ambition, or the elite tier's ambition, outweighs the collective immediate welfare of the majority. This is privilege in action. The security to treat a paycheck as a bargaining chip rather than a lifeline. The option to treat a season as dispensable. It is not malice. It is simply the myopia that can come from a rarefied financial position. As February slips away, the path forward is fraught. The players have a powerful legacy-defining choice. One path is to accept the historic deal on the table. This would lock in revenue sharing, charter flights, and major gains. It would allow the 2025 season to build spectacularly on 2024's energy. It would show sponsors, networks, and fans that the league is stable and ascendant. With continued growth, the revenue-sharing model would deliver ever larger player shares in the coming years, creating a stronger foundation from which to negotiate an even more aggressive deal in the next CBA cycle. This is the strategy of building from a position of strength. The other path is to hold firm, reject the offer, and strike. This gambles everything on the hope that the league, terrified of losing its momentum, will cave and offer a substantially better percentage before April. It is a high-risk game of chicken. The potential reward is a marginally better deal today. The potential cost is the entire 2025 season, the alienation of fans, the rupture of business relationships, and the permanent stunting of the league's growth trajectory. It would be a Pyrrhic victory, where the battle is won but the war for the soul and success of the sport is lost. History provides a clear lesson. Leagues that strike during moments of peak popularity often inflict wounds from which they never fully recover. The WNBA cultural and commercial position, while brighter than ever, is not yet so entrenched that it can survive a self-inflicted year of silence. Breanna Stewart said the quiet part out loud. The stars can afford this fight. The rest cannot. True leadership would heed that warning. True solidarity would prioritize ensuring the season is played, so that every player from the MVP to the last player on the bench receives their paycheck and contributes to a rising tide that lifts all boats. The WNBA's moment is now. The offer is historic. The risk is existential. The question for the players, and particularly for their star-led leadership, is whether the pursuit of what we want is worth jeopardizing everything we have finally begun to build. The decision they make in the coming weeks will echo for a decade, defining not just their bank accounts, but the very future of the league they have fought so hard to elevate. The world is finally watching. What happens next will determine if it keeps watching or turns away. Stay locked in with my channel Simply Explained, your home for the truth behind the WNBA headlines.